Well, thank you for having me this evening. I'm so excited to be with you tonight. My mom and I both are. Um, Bill said my name is Diana, and we've been with Women at Risk for about 6 years now, volunteering at events such as this and just kind of bringing awareness to the topic of human trafficking, of sexual slavery, of all those honor killings, all these different types of things that go on in our world today, and they are such a prevalent issue because people don't want to talk about them, or they don't know that it's going on, or they think that it's something that goes on somewhere else, or in some other country, or in some other culture. It's not something that happens here, but it does, and it is. And so I'm very pleased and glad that all of you are here this evening, that you're showing your support, that you're willing to maybe step out of your comfort zone and learn about something about this not very pleasant topic. But I always say, for us, maybe this isn't a pleasant topic to talk about or to hear about, but for the people who have lived this, how much more unpleasant and horrifying is it to actually be living what we're talking about this evening. So thank you for being here. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how Women at Risk came to be. The organization was founded in the early 2000s, but the idea and the passion behind it started much, much earlier. Our president, Rebecca McDonald, she grew up in East Pakistan. Her parents were missionaries there. Her father was a doctor. And growing up, she had this friend, and they did everything together, she and this young girl. And they grew up together, they went to school together, they played together, they did life together. And her friend, when she was a young teenager, around that age in her early teens, her family members, the men in her family, her brothers, uncles, cousins, they decided that they were going to gang rape her. And when that came about, she protested. And she said no, and she tried to fight, and she tried to, stand up against them and stop them. And how dare she do that? How dare she say anything? How dare she try to stand up against them? And so they decided they were going to teach her a lesson, because she should know that she had no right to say anything. She had no right to try to stop them. And so to teach her a lesson, they poured acid down her throat to silence her voice forever. And when that happened, and when Becky learned of this horrendous thing that they did to her friend, that hole in her friend's throat burned a hole in Becky's heart. And that is when her passion started, to give a voice to the voiceless, to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, to say something against the violences that take place in our world, and ultimately to start a ministry for women and children to try to stop some of these things that take place. So that's where it all started. Years and years later, obviously, Becky got married, and she and her husband did quite a bit of ministry abroad and overseas. And then, like I said, and then in the early 2000s, as kind of a partner project, they started Women at Risk International. And so Women at Risk works to kind of address a lot of these types of issues that we have in the world today: poverty, human trafficking, all those, the acid pouring, the torture, all those different things. But the focus is human trafficking and sexual slavery. So we address lots of things and kind of partner with lots of different projects and efforts, both here and abroad, but the focus is human trafficking and sexual slavery. And we do that in a variety of ways. So we have rescue efforts, we do preventative projects, and then we have supportive programs. And we always say we love our preventative efforts, because as wonderful as it is when we're able to, rescue a child or a woman or a young girl who is in the sex industry, it is so much more amazing when we're able to prevent that child from ever getting to that place. And so we love our preventative programs. All these programs are set up as safe houses in over 45 different countries we have now worldwide, including the United States. And they all look differently. Some of them are set up like bakeries or like coffee shops. And we kind of help the people who have been brought there, who have been rescued, and give them training in those different things. Or some of them are set up to make products, like all the products that you see here today. Everything that we sell in our stores and at events like this are made by the women and children who have been rescued or who are part of one of our prevention programs, who are somehow partnered with one of our safe houses. And we try to use the natural resources of each country, each culture, kind of each region, wherever we're at. So, for example, a lot of our pearls come from Thailand. They have a huge, industry there. That's a big natural resource for them. So we do a lot of our pearls and like our silk and pashmina scarves, all that stuff from Thailand. And we have a lot of like the magazine beads and things that you'll see in some of the African countries, or some of the bone jewelry, which is beautiful. I never even thought I'd wear a bone, I guess. But that jewelry is beautiful, and it's incredible, what these people can do. So then the money that we make from all those products or from all these different programs, 9 out of $10 goes back to fund their salaries. So that's how our safe houses are set up. In terms of our rescue programs, when we go into like the red light districts, we build relationships. It's all about relationships. People sometimes ask, well, I just want to go in there and I want to save all these kids and just take them all, or just buy a whole orphanage of kids or something. But we don't do that. We don't buy kids. We don't steal kids, because then, we're just basically another person who has kidnapped them or who has purchased them. So that doesn't work. So it's all about building relationships. So we'll go into the bars and clubs, strip clubs, and we'll just start talking with these girls, and we'll start building a relationship with them. And we do that, kind of night after night, week after week. And as we build these relationships, we just get to know them. We ask, what's going on in your life? How can I get to know you as a person? And as we get to know them and kind of find out what brought them there, how did they end up there, then we kind of offer them a new opportunity. And we tell them about one of the local safe houses or programs that we have, and offer them the opportunity to make money or to, leave or run away from whatever situation that they're in. And when they're ready, we reach out to them, and that's when we make that move, when they reach out to us. And so we don't buy the kids, we don't go in and steal them away. We build those relationships. And just like our safe houses are different in every country, every program, human trafficking looks different in every culture and in every country, and we'll get into that a little bit. And then our supportive programs are events like this. When we go in, we spread awareness, education on the topics of human trafficking and sexual slavery, and just try to get more and more people aware of the issue, and more people willing to kind of take a stand and to do something about it. And so those are really important, because the more people that we can get fighting this fight, the better chance we have of eradicating this huge issue that's so prevalent in our world today. And it's so important, this is people's lives we're talking about, and and how precious that is. So we're always very happy to do events like this, and to be able to partner with more people who are willing to take a stand and who are willing to say something, and be a circle of protection to the people in their community and in their lives. So human trafficking takes place everywhere, and it looks different everywhere based on the culture. In Thailand, for example, I had the opportunity to travel there about a year ago, just over a year ago, to visit some of our safe houses there, to do program development with some of our partners, and to do outreach into the red light districts. And a big part of the human trafficking in Thailand is sex tourism. It's huge. Um, I was appalled at just, when you open your eyes, how many people you see, these older men, typically from, either Europe or the United States. So you see usually these older white men who are, walking around with these little teenage girls. And that's their whole intent and purpose in being there, is the sex tourism. And human trafficking, sexual slavery, is technically illegal in Thailand, but it's over 60% of their gross national income. So, so there's the struggle. It's technically not allowed, but at the same time, it brings in so much money. It's hard for the government or, their law enforcement to really take a stand against it. And another big piece in places like Thailand is the cultural or the religious factors. In Buddhism, girls are financially responsible for their families. And so it is their job, as soon as they can, their parents want them to start working so that they can provide for them. As soon as that girl is born, a ledger is started of all the money that she owes for her clothing, for her food, for any care that they had to provide for her from infancy on. She's responsible to pay that back and to also financially provide for her parents. It's the responsibility of the boys in the family, the young men, to to earn their parents' merit. And so they have to serve as a monk. That can be for their whole life. That can be for a year. It can be for a weekend. As long as they've served at the temple for at least a few days, that's earned their parents' merit and what they believe to be heaven. And they're good. That's their whole responsibility for their life. And so you can see how that difference, would promote so many girls to end up in the sex industry, because their parents don't know what they can do, so they, send them off to cities like Bangkok so that they can find a job. And once they're there, they get picked up, by a pimp. They usually have all their paperwork, passport, everything taken away, and so they have no way, to get around, no one to talk to, they don't know where to go, and they're stuck. Or, or their parents, they just feel like they don't have any other options, and so they knowingly kind of give them up into that because they don't know what else to do. They don't know what other options they have. Many of them feel like they don't have any other options. So in that type of culture, it's very prevalent for that reason. There's kind of that religious and cultural piece. In Cambodia, for example, they have what we call chicken farms. And on these chicken farms, you can purchase a chicken, or you can purchase a baby girl, or you can purchase a baby boy. So they have these kids, these precious babies, who are brought there for the sole purpose of being sold into the sex industry at whatever age they're able to. And people go there and they can literally pick out a child, or they can pick out a chicken for pretty much the same price. And so, these are the realities that some people are living and facing on a daily basis. We have one little girl, little baby. Her name is Sweetie. We call her Sweetie. She's in India, and she is kind of the face of one of our programs, Pray for War Babies. Her father is a government official in India, and her mom is a teenage girl who lives in one of the brothels in India. And as soon as Sweetie was born, she was taken away from her mom and placed in a separate room and tied to a pole, because her father openly said he does not want her to know love. He does not want her to feel any human affection, any human tenderness, any human touch, because as soon as she's old enough, he plans to sell her into the sex trade. And so when we first met Sweetie, she was about 6 months old, And we did everything we could. We tried talking to him. We tried talking, to the mom, to the brothel owner, to the madam there, and all these different people to try to get Sweetie. And he won't budge. And what we were able to do is trade her scarlet cord. She was tied to this post by a scarlet cord. We were able to trade that scarlet cord for a pack and play. So now she at least has a pack and play that she can play in. And we have that scarlet cord at our war headquarters. And we hold on to that because that's our hope. We know that for Rahab, the scarlet cord was a symbol of freedom and of rescue and redemption. And so we continue to hope and work and pray that one day that cord will symbolize Sweetie's freedom. But we're still working on it. Sweetie is now 2 years old. She's still there. She's still at the brothel. She's still in India. Her dad still won't let her go. We're still working on it, but we don't know. And so, this is the reality. And she's getting to the age where soon he will probably like to sell her or start, selling her in the brothel. And, and we pray that that won't happen. We continue to work at it. But this is her reality, and she's just one Sweetie. There are so many others like her that we don't even know about, that we haven't even met yet, and that need that redemption and that rescue and that freedom so desperately. So those are some of the stories, the situations that we see abroad. And human trafficking and sexual slavery goes on just as much here in the United States, in Michigan, in West Michigan, as it does everywhere else. It just looks a little bit different. Some of the things that you'll see here, traffickers have learned that the American culture, American society is very materialistic. People like stuff, and people have a lot of stuff, and they want the best of all of the stuff, right? And so I really like the movie Taken because it portrays some of this really well with how it goes on kind of in Europe, Western Europe, and in the United States. So typically, when pimps kind of identify these girls, these targets that they're going to go after, there's usually a middleman, a middle guy. And he'll be about late high school age or even college age. And he's the one who actually approaches these girls. When we teach stranger danger, that's great, but that's not usually, who the traffickers are. Because if I see some scary man who looks like he's about to attack me, I'm probably not going to go talk to him, right? Even as a young girl, that probably clicks in my brain. That looks scary. I'm not talking to that man. But if I'm a high school girl and this attractive looking, senior or college guy wants to talk to me, that's a different story, right? And so he will approach these girls and he'll just start talking to her, building a relationship with her, and then after a little while, he will offer her something. He'll say, I have this friend. He's never really hung out with any girls. I'm wondering if you could go to this party with him. I just, kind of feel bad for him, and I was wondering if you would do that for me. And if you do, I'd be so grateful, and I'll give you a Coach bag. I'll buy you a new Coach bag, if you do this favor for me. This girl's thinking, well, that's easy. Like, my friends are all probably going to be at this party anyway, and I'm going to get a free Coach bag out of this? Sure, I'll go to this party with your friend. And that's how it starts. And, and maybe it's not so bad, and she hangs out with this guy at this party, and it's not a big deal. Well, slowly that begins to escalate. And then it turns into sexual favors. But then the gifts also increase. And typically, after that first experience, after that first act of abuse or use, those things will be videotaped or pictures will be taken or something like that. And then that guy will say to that girl, I took pictures of everything that happened tonight, and if you tell anybody, I'm going to post them on Facebook. I'm going to post them around your school. I know who your family is, I'm going to go to your church. I'm going to tell everybody at church what you did. And everyone in your community is going to see these pictures and know what kind of person you are. So it's not presented as they're going to know what happened to you and that you were raped or you were sexually abused or assaulted. It's going to look like you were the one doing this, and this is what you wanted, and this is what you got yourself into. And then that girl is trapped, and she doesn't know who to turn to. She doesn't know who to talk to. She doesn't know who she can tell. She doesn't want her parents to see these horrific pictures of what happened and what was done to her. She doesn't want that all over Facebook for all of her friends to see. And so she stays in that. And and that's how they get her, how they get them. We partner quite a bit with a lady named Teresa Flores. She has an amazing story. She's a survivor of human trafficking. She grew up on the east side of the state in the Auburn Hills area. And if you see some of our materials out there today, the book that's called The Slave Across the Street, that is her story. And that is the book that she's written about her story. So she grew up in this very nice, affluent area in Auburn Hills. Her grandfather was a judge, so her family was very well known in the community. She did really well in school. She was a straight A student. She was involved in all these extracurricular activities. She was doing really well. And when she was in high school, that's what happened. She met this guy who was a couple years older than her in some of her classes, and he started hanging around her locker. He started talking to her. He was so attractive, and she was thinking, oh my, like out of all the girls in our school or in my class, he wants to talk to me. And she felt really special, and she was very excited about this. And so they started just talking at school. She knew her parents' rules. She knew what she was and wasn't allowed to do, so she was very careful. She never went to his house. She never let him come to hers. She would never, walk home from school with him or anything. One day, he was waiting for her after track practice, and he offered her a ride home. Said, instead of whatever, you're taking the bus or you're walking, however you're getting home, how about I just give you a ride? I'm headed that way anyway. I'm going to my cousin's house. And she thought, well, why not? It's just a ride home. He's just going to drop me off. And they get in the car and they head out from school. And he said, hold on just a minute. I just have to stop at my house first. She's thinking, okay, well, whatever, I guess I just won't go in with him. Whatever he needs to get to bring to his cousin's house, he can do that. And they get to his house, and he says, why don't you just come in? You can wait for a few minutes while I get my stuff, so you don't have to wait outside. And she was kind of thinking she wasn't super comfortable with this, but she thought, it's not that big of a deal. I'll just go in for a couple minutes. And so she went in with him, and and that's what happened. His cousins were there. They were the traffickers in her situation, and they assaulted her that day and took pictures of the whole thing. And when she kind of came to after everything that happened to her, she was abused pretty significantly. And after she kind of came to, they took her home. She didn't tell anyone. And the next day at school, this guy that she had been hanging out with, he showed her all the pictures. And he said, we know where your grandpa works. We know where your dad works. We know where your family lives. We know who your family is. We know what classes you're in. We know everything about you. And if you tell anyone, these pictures will be everywhere. And she was terrified and she didn't know what to do. And they said, we'll be back at your house tonight. And that's what went on in her life for the next few years. They would traffic her out of her home every night for years, and no one knew. They would take her at night and bring her back early in the morning before she had to get up for school, and she would go to school every day, and she continued to live her life, and no one knew that this was going on. and she didn't know who to tell or how to tell them. So that went on for a few years. One night, they took her to a motel, and more men came that night than she had ever experienced before. So she was very severely abused that night, and they left her for dead in that motel. She didn't die. God did not plan for her life to end there, and He had a purpose, and He was going to use all this torture and abuse and these horrifying things that happened to her. He was going to turn something amazing out of that. So she got help. She left the motel. Someone from a nearby diner called the police for her, and that is when her family and everyone found out what had been going on for years out of their home. And basically, after she grew up, she began telling people her story and going to events and sharing her experience, because she thought, if there's just one girl at one high school that I can talk to save her from, what I went through, it's worth it. It's worth it to me. And she started what's called the SOAP project. She was thinking, when I was in those motel rooms, or when I was in those bedrooms that they would bring her in, she said, I never even knew where I could call, who I could turn to. And she thought, and if girls had a number or had somewhere where they could call or knew what that number was, maybe they would be able to reach out for help sooner than I was able to. And she got to thinking, and she realized that in those experiences, in those times, the only time she was ever alone was when she was in the bathroom washing up in between men who would come to see her. And so she thought, we could print the phone numbers for Homeland Security, the human trafficking hotline, on soap bars, on the label. And then have those, bring them to all these motels and all these places. And so when these girls are there, they have a number. Even if they're not able to call right then, they can grab, that wrapper or that soap bar or whatever, and have that phone number and know where they can reach out to. So this project has become huge, and we partner with her on a lot of events at Super Bowl, at auto shows. We found that all these type of events, so many girls and children are brought in for those, specifically for sex tourism, for the sex industry here in the U.S., here in Michigan. And we track the numbers. You can buy kids on Craigslist, and they're listed as escorts or whatever, and that they're 18. They're not. We study those pictures, we look at that stuff. Those are 14-year-old girls who are very much not willingly involved in this. And those numbers on Craigslist, we track that leading up to these type of events, like the auto show or like Super Bowl, they'll increase from hundreds to thousands of girls that are available and brought in for these types of events. So when we have those, we go to the motels and the hotels. We just did this before our place. That's becoming huge. That's a huge target for traffickers, is spots, events where there's many people brought in for entertainment purposes. That's a huge target for them. And so we go into the bars and we go into the motels and we pass out these soap labels and we pass out information on missing children. And just like we build relationships with the girls and the children that are in these bars and clubs, we try to build relationships with the strip club owners, with the bar owners. So many of them either don't realize that this is an issue, or some of them think that they're helping these girls, especially in other countries. They say to us, we're so glad that you're doing what you're doing and that we can partner with you. We're happy to have them working here in our club because at least they're not on the street. And so in their minds, they're thinking that they're helping them. And so it's not so much of a, men are evil, or these club owners are evil and everyone else is good. It's just about the money. And it comes down to the money. Whether if you're looking at drugs or any other type of, black market industry or sales, once you've sold that product, it's gone and you can't sell it again. But with the sex industry, you can keep selling that person, that child, over and over and over again. And so that's what we try to teach people. This isn't even about the sex. It's about the money. And this is a money problem. We find that on average, once kids enter the sex industry or once they've been trafficked, the life expectancy for that person is typically like 7 to 12 years past that point. So most of them do not live longer than that just because of this severe abuse, the emotional pain. Typically there's a lot of substance use that goes on, either on their part to numb the pain and to be able to get through what they have to get through, or by their traffickers and pimps. They kind of force them to use substances so that they're more compliant with whatever they're required to do. And so it's so important to have preventative programs, because how scary to think that these little children that are sold, the average age of a trafficked victim of a child is 13. So this isn't like these 30-year-old women that we see in the movies who are gorgeous and confident and, who like the job that they have. That's not the reality, but that's what the media portrays to us. The reality is little kids who are sold into this and who aren't expected to even live into their 20s or 30s after all these horrific experiences. And the media and technology play a huge role in this. That's why this has become such a prevalent issue. It was an issue before, but it's so much more on the rise now because you have technology, and you can view this stuff online, like pornography, and those thoughts and images then turn into behaviors or actions. And you can purchase people online. You can buy sex online. You can view all this. It's all over. And you don't even have to travel necessarily anymore. You can, people can get involved in it in so many different ways. And so I'd like to share with you kind of some of the checkpoints that we see here, and specifically why Michigan is such a huge hotspot for trafficking. People don't realize that, but it is. Especially like the Grand Rapids area. It's in the top 10, 15 cities for human trafficking in the country. We have Homeland Security here all the time, and we're partnering with them doing work because it's huge. Some of those are, we have a very big middle class population. And like I said, along with that comes some of the materialism of our culture. And so girls are drawn into this unknowingly. Similarly, we have a lot of migrant work and migrant communities, and so those are very easy targets for traffickers. Also, we're close to many big cities. We're close to Detroit, we're close to Chicago, and we're close to international borders. That's huge in terms of getting kids in and out of the country. And we're also close to several bodies of water. The lakes, just like the international border, provide a huge opportunity to easily move people, not just in and out of the state or the city, but in and out of the country. And so that's a big thing that traffickers look for. Also, the kind of conservative nature and mindset of West Michigan provides a huge mask to this whole issue. And traffickers love that, because people here think that this doesn't happen here. And they don't think that this happens, in my backyard or in my school or in my town, but it does. And because people's eyes are somewhat closed to this issue, or they don't want to know about it, that's a huge opportunity. I'm going to give you some statistics. An estimated 2,400 children are living as slaves in West Michigan, according to the U.S. Department of State. Michigan Internet classified websites had the highest percentage of young females of any states used in the study, including New York and Minnesota. Michigan, I talked about Grand Rapids, but Michigan ranks 13th among the states for the number of sex trafficking victims. And the number of adolescent girls trafficked monthly in Michigan is greater than the annual number of females under 25 killed in car accidents and those who have committed suicide. Okay? So this truly is modern day slavery. And that's an issue that, that we need to recognize, we need to come to terms with, and we need to learn how to address it. Some things that you can look for, some signs. I talked about some of the things that happen or that change. And so along with that, these are some of the signs that you can look for. If you see that all of a sudden a young girl or even a young boy is starting to accumulate all these new things, and they're really nice things. You don't really know where they would have the money to get those things, right? That might be a red flag. That should be a red flag. If anything, it warrants a question on where is this coming from. And if the answer is, well, I have this new boyfriend, he's been buying me all this really nice stuff, that's a big red flag. That's a warning sign, and that's something to look more into. Similarly, like I talked about with Teresa, she was trafficked out of her home for years, and she continued to go to school every day. Her grades dropped. She went from all A's to failing her classes. No one asked. No one asked. It would have taken a simple question. What's going on? You used to be a straight A student. You're failing all of your classes. What happened? And it's not to say that she would have answered. Oftentimes, even when we ask the questions, they're too scared to say something. But when they're ready or when they have the opportunity, they know that you're a safe person and that you're someone they can go to. So when they feel safe enough to reach out for help, they know that you're someone that they can go to and they can turn to. You'll see if someone has a highly controlled or restricted schedule, money that they can spend, or communication, they always seem kind of skittish or hesitant. That's a red flag if it seems that they're not in control of maybe their phone or their money or their schedule. Along with the grades, unexplained absences or truancy that starts accumulating, that's something to look for. If you see that a child is visiting internet chat rooms or classified sites or have a suggestive online profile, look into that. And don't necessarily, jump to conclusions. Don't assume anything. Oftentimes, those profiles or those usernames are not set up by them. If they're being trafficked, this is something that they're being forced into and forced to do. So they may not have even set that up by themselves, but it's something to be aware of. If you notice, this was one that I was not aware of for the longest time. If you notice that a young person has a tattoo that they're that's new, or maybe they're hesitant to explain, that might be a sign that they were branded. Okay, that might be a branding. And so you want to, look into that, or just try to ask some more questions if they're really hesitant about talking about that or explaining that. Isolation in general from family, friends, or other networks is something to look for. And just that overall feeling of paranoia or mistrust, or just being really skittish, really afraid. We see a lot of that. Obviously, any bruises or physical signs of abuse, running away from home, starting to reference frequent travel to other cities. If all of a sudden, this young person is talking about all these trips that they're going on and here and there and all over the place, that's something to ask some more questions about, because they could very easily be taken to these different places, to these different cities and sites, and being sold there or used there. Any drug use or addiction, any sudden changes in behavior, perhaps a change in dress, and this can go either way. We see it both ways. Either a person starts dressing maybe inappropriately, more provocatively than they did before. That's something to look for, but also the opposite. We often see kids who will start to cover up and they will put on the layers. And it's summer and they're wearing long sleeves and turtlenecks and or baggy sweatshirts. Sometimes that may be a sign that they're trying to look at, they're either hiding something on their body that they don't want people to ask questions about, or that they're trying to look undesirable because subconsciously they're thinking, maybe if I just look undesirable enough, people will stop doing what they're doing to me. People will stop paying attention to me. They'll stop touching me and they will leave me alone. So any big changes in dress and things like that. And so if you notice those types of things, just ask questions. Or if you're not sure, we have lots of information. You can always, call us. And whether it's a simple question or you think that there might actually be a situation going on and you want to refer that. So we want to encourage you to, first of all, have an awareness of this stuff that's going on. Spread that awareness. Make a call if you need to. Ask questions. And most importantly, be willing to be a circle of protection, okay, for the people and the children in your life. And, not all of us are parents, not all of us are grandparents, but everyone has a child in their life who's important to them, whether it's at school or at a church or in their family or whatever. And be that safe person, be that safe place. You should be a sanctuary that people can turn to and they can run to when they need that circle of protection, when they don't know. And like I said, even if you ask questions and they don't answer, don't be offended by that. Just be there. Be the safe person that they can turn to and they can reach out to when they're ready and when they're able to do so. There's always opportunities to get involved. We definitely encourage you to buy the product. What a wonderful reason to shop, right? As we're talking about all this materialism of our society and our culture, what a wonderful opportunity to flip that, to turn that around. Instead of having more junk that we don't need and probably could get rid of, why not purchase something that was made by a rescued or at-risk child or young girl, woman or boy? It breaks my heart how many young boys we have in this. And that's still something that's not even as recognized as much as it is with women and girls. And so the boys that we have at our safe houses, my heart just breaks for them. And so all those products that you see out there, we encourage you to buy them and to share that story. When you're wearing your scarf and someone compliments you on it, don't just say thank you. Tell them thank you and then tell them the story of that scarf, that was made in Thailand by a young lady who was rescued from the sex industry, who was rescued from human trafficking. Give them some information and encourage them to get involved that way. We encourage you to be aware of legislation that's going on. If you join our email list or our website, we constantly have posts about legislation that's going on and how you can get involved that way by voting or by writing, to legislators. And just being aware of this issue, being willing to talk about it, being willing to tell others, and being willing to be a circle of protection for the people in your life.